6 RBI on the day. Oh, and he pitched a complete game and struck out 8 in 4 innings.
Masterful performance.
Just all around, man. You got to give it up to that young man right there. That was an incredible game, and to do so on ESPN, special moment for all those kids. And I know at that watch party at Carolina Wings on Valentine yesterday, packed house there, the loudest I have ever been for a Little League World Series baseball game. Now, I have not been to many Little League World Series baseball game watch parties, and by that I mean that was the first one, but they showed up, they delivered, everybody had a good time, nice. And I think nobody had to sweat anything out because, again, they had no obligation to make that game close.
No obligation to make this close, Lou Holtz.
That's right. Mm-hmm. I put that on a T-shirt. Mm-hmm. I might have to start repeating that one. Start parroting that once we get to certain games on the schedule this year for South Carolina.
Correct.
It's a good coaching tactic. And I think we've covered about everything you can cover with this South Carolina football team, but maybe we haven't gone into depth as much on coaching. Obviously, a very big part of the game. And what inspired this yesterday was me going through The Athletic, and I found an interesting list where they tiered out coaches. And this is something they've been doing for a couple of years now, where they break up coaches all across FBS into 8 different tiers. And we'll run through some of them because Shane Beamer's in a very interesting tier, especially considering the one that they had him in last year. So tier 1 is just multiple-time champions, which that's a class of 2 with Kirby and Dabo. Tier 2, established winners. Pretty decent list right there. Tier 3, high-level consistency. And if you think, oh, maybe that's the one Shane's in, incorrect. They have him in Tier 4, which is rising stars and steady hands. Now, last year, they had him in Tier 6, which was prove it season ahead. So he jumped that and the up and down tier, which tells me, Preston Thorne, that the perception of Shane Beamer is that he's really one more season like last year away from being considered a consistent winner, which makes sense based off what happened in 2023. I mean, you have that year in 22 where you end the season incredibly strong. You crush the college football playoff hopes of 2 different teams that just so happen to wear orange. And then you have a year like you did in 23. It was disappointing, but you bounced back last year when nobody expected you to bounce back. I think it's an interesting way to look at the national perception of what Shane's doing here in Columbia and with this program as a whole.
Yeah, well, the way people see the program and the way people see Shane are starting to combine, right? Shane was seen as an upstart. He was young, and again, many people came on people's radar with getting mayonnaise dumped on his head.
That's the first coach to do so.
Right?
The first one.
Groundbreaking.
To take the mayo bath.
It'll go down in college football history.
Moisturizing.
Yes.
Works as that, yes, I guess.
It is. This is true.
And borderline getting concussed on that, too.
This is true. One of the more disgusting things I've ever seen my wife do was use mayonnaise as moisturizer. I was like,
that's a thing?
It's a real thing. It's a real thing.
You weren't just like saying that tongue-in-cheek. Like, that's a real
I think it's something about like the eggs and the proteins, and this. I think you get real deep in didn't know we was going to be here early this morning. But yes, real thing.
Yeah, you can do that and olive oil. Yeah, we can have a conversation at some point.
Huh?
Mm-hmm. You have a beautiful head of hair. Maybe it might be something you need to think about.
I mean, I'm open to doing anything for my hair. Mm-hmm. I mean, I am very particular about the care of my hair. Even though if you're watching on the YouTube stream, I come in here with a hat every morning. It's because I'm too lazy to get out of bed and mess with it. And I will milk every second I can to lay down for a little bit longer. But you bet when I leave here, yeah, that's when it's on. But as somebody who is very particular about the care of their hair,
take note. We'll come back to that. We'll come back. Didn't mean to derail the conversation. Point being, that's how we met. That's how a lot of the nation met Shane.
Yes.
In this young upstart program. And it was kind of a fun conversation. Then maybe we won some games and things started happening. Then we took a dip. And now we're trying to get on the idea of further being consistent, being a team that shows up every year and you can count on them. Jay, this is a take that I've stolen from Jay. And he used to say, like, if South Carolina can get to the level of being Iowa, where you can mark them down for 7 to 9 wins regardless every year. I think that would be a huge level of consistency and something I would be very happy with as a fan. We talked about that game that's going to Ireland, was it Kansas State and Iowa State?
Yeah.
Book them.
Yeah,
book
both
of them,
programs.
Book them both for 8 wins.
Yeah.
8 to 9, regardless, right?
And if they have 7, it's disappointing, but they could live with it.
And so South Carolina wants to get to that period. And I think we're getting there. We're trending there. And I think Shane is being recognized as a guy who can take them there and maybe even to the next level.
I think that's an underrated thing in college football that I think some fans of certain programs don't value enough is always being at least consistently winning, having consistent winning seasons, right? And I just use this as a life example because my dad, lifelong Tennessee Vol fan, right? Growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, that's their heyday. Well, then they had a couple of years where they're only winning 8 games. And I remember my dad saying, well, I'm tired of playing in the Peach Bowl. Buddy, for an extra 15-plus years, you wished they played in the Peach Bowl every year. You would have sacrificed a body part to get back to the Peach Bowl, right? Then when you get bad for a while, you forget how hard it is to be like, you become spoiled as a fan base. Like winning 8 games in a college football season when you're not like Alabama or, Ohio State or those traditional powers is really difficult. And maintaining that level of success is really hard. So for somebody like Shane, if he can get in, if you're considered somebody who is a tier 3 high level consistency type coach and your program is viewed the same way, that's a real positive. And that's the thing, like when we talk about James Franklin, I've been asked the question before, if they don't win it all this year, is James Franklin on the hot seat? I don't think so. Would it be really disappointing if they don't? Because this is really the year, I think the first time since he's been there where they're built to do it. But if they still win 10 games and don't do it, you're Penn State. Why would you take the risk on anybody else, right? And then possibly have a couple of years of mediocrity. You have to deal with like the devil versus the one that you don't. And the one that you don't can possibly lead you to some dark places as a program. Kyle is on the line right now. Kyle, welcome to the early game. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, guys. Just a couple quick things. Just listening to you guys this morning. Wanted to throw in a few items. First of all, I'm 52 years old. Most of my friends are bald-headed, and I have a wonderful full head of salt and pepper, beautiful silver fox hair.
Yes, sir.
For one thing. But second of all, playing on Coach Holtz's comment about you are not required to play a close game. I mean, you can blow a team out if you want to. Wanted to know what you guys thought about, because I personally think the Gamecocks and the Tigers both have great games opening up the season, and I think both win the opening game. So who wins the game in a bigger, bolder fashion? Ooh. Do the Tigers beat LSU bigger, or does South Carolina beat Virginia Tech bigger? And I'll hang up and listen.
Ooh, that's a great question, Kyle. Yeah, making us think this early. Yeah, making sure the mentals are in check. That's a great question. I think South Carolina has the ability to beat their opponent worse just because there's so many more question marks on Virginia Tech's team than Clemson. But the LSU curse of opening night is real. Brian Kelly's inability to win a season opener in big games, because it's not like LSU plays, Alcorn State or Nicholls State every year to start their season. They've played Southern Cal. They've played Florida State twice on neutral fields and lost. Now they have to go to Clemson, a team that is a legitimate national title contender, and win to start the season in a place that's, for most teams, really hard to win.
Say it. Say it. It's early. Say it. Because I agree.
Man.
I'll say it.
You're going to say it? You say Clemson beats LSU by more?
I think Clemson has a chance to that based on the defenses that Brian Kelly has put on the field.
They've been bad.
It could be a chance for that one to get ugly early. It could be. I think both teams are evenly matched talent-wise, but with the opening game history that they have and the poor defenses, there could be a potential for that thing to go out of bounds very quickly.
Yeah, it very well could. And the reason I don't know if I can exactly get there is because I do see a scenario where South Carolina beats the brakes off Virginia Tech. I listened to Brent Pry's press conference from earlier in the week when he was talking. I'm trying to find like the subtleties, right? Like what does he mention versus what does he not mention about his team? And I think the one quote that stands out was they had a lopsided practice.
Virginia Tech did?
Virginia Tech did, where one team one side is much higher than the other, and then that just flops. And he said they're struggling with consistency right now. Meaning if they just have a bad day and they play South Carolina, if you can at least not turn the ball over, your operation's running smoothly, and maybe you force a couple turnovers and Virginia Tech turns the ball over, that game could be 20-plus points. It very well could. I think both games stay within a 2-touchdown threshold, but I don't think it's far-fetched at all to think that Clemson would beat LSU by more, given history and given where some of these teams are. But that's a really good question. And they're playing at home. South Carolina, Virginia Tech being a neutral field might be, and it's a different type of game week. It's on a Sunday, not a Saturday. Could play into that. I think I would slightly give the edge to South Carolina solely on opponent. Because Virginia Tech, I think, could be one of those teams that's just, like the roller coaster team of the year. But the coaching part brings us to really what our theme of the show is going to be today. So the questions are, what makes a great coaching staff? What makes a good coach? A CEO of a program? How important are coordinators? And how do we feel about ours going into 2025? And what is the track record for development? Now, that last question is what we'll tackle next year on the early game. And the answer to that question is going to surprise you. That's next.
Pressing it for our friends at Absolute Glass, the premier glass company of the Midlands, offering auto, home, and business glass repair. So if your glass is damaged, shattered, cracked, or broken, they can handle the job. Cracked windshield? No problem. They'll come out to your location and they'll replace it for you, usually for free, and they'll work directly with the insurance to take away the headache. That's right. They'll come out to wherever you are, school, home, work, it does not matter. Absolute Glass will come out to where you are and take care of the job for you. And they'll give you a free quote for any job. Now, if you're at home looking to increase the value of your home, you can do that with new windows or mirrors. And Absolute Glass will take care of that for you, too. Windows, mirrors, shower enclosures. Say it all the time. If you can see through it, Ray and Marianne at Absolute Glass can do it. So check them out online at AbsoluteGlassInc.com.
So far, looking pretty good. No accidents that we are aware of at this point, and we're not encouraging any. So let's have a good Friday morning. 93 for the high today. Maybe a couple of afternoon showers or storms are possible. Kind of isolated storms tomorrow, 91. But then we're looking for sunny skies on Sunday, 92 for the high. And really, we're supposed to stay with sunny conditions through the start of the week through about Wednesday. We will have highs in the low 90s. Currently, it's 76 on 107.5 The Game.
Recruiting's cool, and loading your team up with blue chip recruits. Name of the game. But maybe the most important part is development. And I went on a mission yesterday to find out to what extent does South Carolina under Shane Beamer develop talent in comparison to some of the top dogs in college football. So here's my method. Here's what I went out to find. How many players that weren't blue chips, because we talked about blue chip ratio earlier this week, where it's a collection of 4 or 5-star players on your roster. And, of course, for those who don't know what blue chip ratio is, if you have more than 50% of the players in your last 4 recruiting classes be 4 or 5 stars, you are then considered good enough to win a national championship, because all teams that have won national titles since this was kept up with in 2011 have had a 50+% blue chip ratio. But how many of those non-blue chip players can you turn in to pros? So I went through all the players that were drafted from South Carolina from 2022 to 2025 this year, just to count how many of those players coming out of high school were 3 stars or below. And here's the list. Kevin Harris, Nick Muse, Darius Rush, Jalen Brooks, Marcellus Dial, Nick Gargiulo, Nick Emenwari, TJ Sanders, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway. If you were counting, you would notice that's 11 non-blue chip high school players drafted since 2022 for South Carolina. So then I was like, how much is it for some of the biggest names in the sport? So I looked for Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan. Biggest names in the sport with the largest budgets. Only 2 schools turned more non-blue chip players into NFL draft picks. And that'd be Michigan with 14 and Georgia at 13. You may be surprised, Preston Thorne, to hear that South Carolina has more than 3 times as many non-blue chip players drafted in the NFL since 2022 than mighty Alabama, who only has 3. Tennessee with 8, Texas 7, LSU 10, Clemson 4, Ohio State 5. So when putting it in that perspective, does it change your perception of how well this program has developed non-blue chip talent over these last 4 years?
Yeah, that's something that you could definitely look at once we get the guys into the program, that they come in and they reach their maximum potential. Also, it might be a good look on how they evaluate during the recruiting process. So maybe they evaluate during the recruiting process and they're able to see things that maybe these recruiting services or other coaches don't see, and they're like, oh, we want to get this guy. There's always a story about Nick Emenwari, how Nick probably would have eventually ended up getting there, but we saw him early, stashed him to the side, and sort of kept him over here. I think about it like ingredients in a grocery store. We may be able to go to a grocery store and see maybe that bruised fruit over there and be like, oh, yeah, I can do something with that. You know, instead of somebody else that might not take that, we can take that thing and make it into something. So I think it's both on the evaluation side and the development side where they are able to see people and not necessarily rely on what the services are.
And that's one of my biggest gripes is some programs. I think college basketball is probably the greatest offender of this, is having the recruiting sites do the recruiting for you.
Correct.
Right? You have to find fit for your team. in your culture, whatever it is that you're trying to build, the pieces need to fit and they need to be appropriate. And if you look at maybe like the culture part of it, to use everybody's favorite sports buzzword, guys like Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight were perfect additions to this roster because of what they had in that area. And someone like Demetrius Knight, now Kyle Kennard, more highly regarded transfer portal player out of Georgia Tech.
More
Demetrius
highly
Knight,
regarded,
yes.
but not highly
Not
regarded.
highly, yes,
Right.
but more highly.
Mm-hmm.
Demetrius Knight, definitely not. As Shane's talked about how he had some coaches saying, this guy's not SEC caliber. But by talking to him, evaluating certain things, identifying a few traits that he knew could translate, was able to bring him into that room and make him a successful player to where he's drafted in the second round of the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
There's that development part, and there's that identification part that I think this coaching staff is really starting to hit their stride on, and that's how you become a consistent winner.
Yeah, and they seem to be very confident in what they do as recruiters and as developers, and they're starting to get in their system. And these coaches were all part of their growing process also. Shane hired a fairly young staff that were growing with him, and that seems to be part of their process of they're all figuring out who they are, what they like, and you start to see Torian Gray develop archetypes for like, oh, he's a Torian Gray type of guy. And, you know, it might be from a physical traits or it might be mental traits or whatever the case is. So, yeah, I think that is happening. And, of course, it doesn't hurt when you win. And you can get
That
guys
attracts anybody.
You can get guys to say, hey, and it becomes a self-fulfilling thing. Do you want to be like Nick Emenwari? Come play for me. Did you see what Demetrius Knight just did? Come play for us. Kyle Kennard, that's our guy. Come play for us. So it starts to build on itself.
It certainly does. And then your player pool that you can choose from gets larger. And it's always nice whenever you're looking for suitors, when you can turn down some. Turning down suitors is a luxury, right? In any facet of life. We'll go back to the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Joe is on the line right now. Joe, good morning. Good to hear from you, sir. It's been a couple days. Welcome back to the early game.
Hey, good morning, Elijah, Preston, and then First Lady Jen. How you guys doing this morning?
We're good, bro.
Fantastic.
Good. So listen, man. Ever since Shane has become head coach, I've always been impressed with the way he developed his players. You think about all of the big schools when they go into the portal. It's easy for them to grab the most talented guys because they can say, okay, we won 10 or 11 games for the past 3 years, and we've won national championship. Shane doesn't have that under his collar. But the fact that you can look at the past 3 to 4 years, how he developed certain players. I mean, he goes in the portal. I think he does better in the portal than any other team in the country, because look what he's developed. Look what he has brought out of these guys who were not looked at. He evaluates great, and he develops even better.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you got to look at the fact that, I mean, White, isn't he the linebackers coach for us?
Mm-hmm. He is. The coordinator and linebackers coach.
Right. And so I also look at this. I hear a lot of people talk about they think that the linebackers are going to be the weakness, or they're questionable about the linebackers. I don't think so, man. Clayton has a lot to say about that. And so, you know, it's a great show this morning, man. I was thinking about calling you guys yesterday with this, and just so happened, Elijah, you brought it to the table, man. Shane Beamer is one of the best at what he does when it comes to developing players and evaluating them from a distance and saying, hey, even though he's a 2 or 3 star guy coming out of the portal, we can do this for him. And
Absolutely.
he's proven that.
Yeah.
He's proven that.
Absolutely.
Great listening to you guys, man. I hope you all have a great weekend, man. Go Gamecocks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Great call. And those are really good points, too. And to kind of add to Joe's point, too, in terms of just 2 or 3 stars, I mentioned the 11 non-blue chip high school recruits that this program's gotten drafted since 2022. Out of those 11, we have 4 of them were 0 stars coming out of high school. Out of all the other schools I mentioned on that list, none of those schools had more than 1 0-star drafted. Nick Muse, Jalen Brooks, Marcellus Dial, Nick Gargiulo. 4 guys who did not have a single star in a recruiting service, or at least on 24/7. That's the primary one I used. Easy search database. The primary one I used, those fellows, when you pull up their pages, 0 stars on them. it's a testament to exactly how well they've been able to develop players. We'll continue this discussion as well as tackle the biggest question on the coaching staff. There's a new offensive coordinator in town, and what impact will Mike Shula have on this offense? We'll discuss next on the early game. Football season is here, and let's act like we're running a 2-minute drill because there's not a lot of time left to take advantage of Zero Res back to school BOGO special. 2-minute drill, no huddle. The time is running out, so act now before that clock hits 0 and you don't get the ball in the end zone. Because when you get 2 rooms of carpet cleaned with Zero Res, and you just mention my name, Elijah Campbell, or 107.5 The Game, you'll get an additional 2 rooms free. They call it the Back to School BOGO special, but it's more like buy 2, get 2 free. It's a fantastic deal. And with what Zero Res does to your home in terms of making it the safest clean possible, that's using their Zero Res zero water technology, clean surfaces without the use of detergents or harsh chemicals. So it's a fantastic, safe clean for you, your family, and your pets. Call them now, 803-262-4020. Take advantage of this deal, or go to ZeroResColumbia.com. Zero Res, spell it backwards or forwards. It's the right way to clean.
Still all clear on the highways. We'd like this to be a fabulous Friday morning for you. And 93 is the high that we're looking for today. Might see a couple afternoon or evening storms and an isolated storm at some point tomorrow. 91 for the high. Sunny and 92 on Sunday. And we'll get a stretch of sunny days, like, no precipitation, that thing that we've been experiencing for so long. Sunny and low 90s through about Wednesday. Right now, though, starting off your morning pretty decent. 76 on 107.5 The Game.
Starting on Monday, August 18th, the game expands, getting bigger. The Game Network growing larger than life. You can't escape us in the state of South Carolina because we'll be expanding into Charleston, WIWF, 96.9 HD3 to be specific. So you'll be able to hear the game in Columbia, Myrtle Beach, and Florence like you have been for a couple of years now. And now Charleston. We're everywhere.
Shout out to the good folks in Lake City. I was out there yesterday, and some folks out there said that they listen. Lake City, Turbeville, Sumter, all those towns going in that direction. So it's really cool. We're expanding. Looking forward to getting down to the Chuck, getting down to Charleston. I'm excited about that.
I think we need some road trips.
I think we do.
You know how they used to do the tours, like the welcome home tours or whatever it was? I think that's something that we should do.
I think we should, too. We should take
Road
a
trip.
page. Take a page from South Carolina football's playbook here.
Yeah. Now, I do want the fancy bus. I don't know that we would get that necessarily.
I do.
Yeah. If the fancy bus is my car, we could pile up in that.
I was going to say, they probably would say, oh, we've got the corporate Yugo.
Right. Or the 107.5 The Game moped.
Yep, that'd be fun. As long as we have matching helmets.
Yes, as long as we had matching helmets. That way there's a little bit of uniformity there.
Oh, I'm just saying. Yeah.
But the Game Network, I'm going to use one of my senior English words that I learned. Ubiquitous.
Ooh, good word.
You're ubiquitous in the state of South Carolina.
Look at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not just a hat rack.
You're elevating us.
Yeah.
We approcate that.
Getting learnt on this program.
Well, school is back in session, so we have to have more learning elements.
That's right. And that's, vocab word of the day, ubiquitous.
Okay.
Just like three-star players that come to this program and turn into NFL players. Part of a culture of development and guys that actually fit. In our AAA heating and air phone lines right now, David wants to call in and weigh in on the quality of the recruits that Shane Beamer has brought in his time as the head coach at South Carolina. David, good morning and welcome to the early game.
Good morning. I don't think Beamer has gotten enough credit for the character of the people that he's brought in, not just the ability, but we don't have the problems like a state over seems to have. But I don't think he gets enough credit for that. The question that I had for y'all this morning is I've talked to several former players, and they're not sold on Shula as offensive coordinator. So my question is, if we underperform the first couple games, how short a leash do you think Shula will have? Take it off the air, and thank y'all. Appreciate what you do.
Of course. Appreciate your call, David.
Let me address the first part first. I think as a fan base, we definitely do take for granted that we don't read about our players very often being in trouble, because there was times, and across the country you'll see it, that come July, players will get in trouble, right? And we just have not had to deal with that. There have been a couple of issues that when there were things that came up, they were handled expeditiously, and the players did not return. They were taken off the team. So I think that's something that, one, you handle it by recruiting high character dudes, and then two, if something does happen, the staff has taken care of it. So that's a great point, David. Now to the second point.
Yeah, the second point, South Carolina will not be winning the Fulmer Cup anytime soon, for those who are familiar with that not-so-prestigious award. The second point with Mike Shula, this is an interesting point here. It's been a while since he's been a play caller at the college level, I think. Just because he was in the NFL for so long after his head coaching stint at Alabama, which was forever ago now, it feels like, because Nick Saban had that job for a long time. Sometimes I forget he was the last head coach at Alabama before Nick Saban took over. But there's a lot of precedent of him having really good offenses with scrambling quarterbacks. For those who don't remember, he was the offensive coordinator for Cam Newton in the play caller when he was with the Carolina Panthers, especially with his Rookie of the Year season and his MVP season, where they won 15 games in a 16-game regular season and went to the Super Bowl. Those were the best years of Cam Newton's career, was when Mike Shula was calling the plays. It's a reason to be optimistic. He loves using the tight ends. I know Preston's a Big 12 personnel guy. I think we'll see a good bit of that this season. They haven't necessarily brought up. I've asked Mike Shula before, and he goes, "It's something we're looking into." And in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, I think you're gonna run a lot of that." But the skepticism, which I understand with any new offensive coordinator, because Dowell got in a real good rhythm with Lenoris. But I think what helps Mike Shula in this instance is being in that room for the entire season and already being hands-on with Lenoris. He's not coming into this situation with no previous context. He saw the development, and I think Mike Shula, with his endless experience coaching football, isn't going to put them in a position where he doesn't think they can succeed. Now, if the team struggles to begin the season a little bit, it depends how they struggle. It depends if they are truly play-calling issues. There's a good chance that the play-calling decisions can be correct, but if the offensive line isn't very good and protection breaks down and there's really not much of a good running game established because of not having phase on or because the offensive line just struggles to get push at the line of scrimmage, then I don't think Mike Shula is going to be the scapegoat for that, right? I think there's going to be other things that become addressed before we get to that point. I think we'll see him coach the entire season. Now, we don't want a Marcus Satterfield type thing where clearly the offensive playbook and signals and calls and just the operation was way too complex, and you saw some really fundamental mistakes early in the 2022 season. And then once they kind of took some of that out, you saw the offense really start to thrive at the end of the year. This September's vital to this team's chances of making the college football playoff. These are really important first few weeks of the season here. But I don't think, even with all of that if the offense struggles, I don't think there's going to be any type of change made at all. I think Shane's going to give him room to cook.
Well, history sort of shows us that Shane gives his coordinator space to breathe, even when things are not necessarily going well, i.e. Marcus Satterfield, for a while Clayton White. He's been always supportive, and he's always been very much behind. And I don't know whether it's because he feels like he made the right decision or he's supporting them. Whatever the case is, he has not to this point shown us you ready for a big word?
Oh, I'm ready for a big word, absolutely. The vocabulary lesson.
Proclivity.
Oh, that's good.
He has not shown the proclivity to undermine his offensive coordinators. So I don't think that will happen this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And here's the thing with Marcus Satterfield, too, comparing him to Mike Shula. Big age difference. Big difference in experience. I think what helps Mike in this situation is his history coaching really good quarterbacks, is his history at multiple levels of football, being able to be a play caller and being able to kind of relate to different types of quarterbacks with different skill sets, right? He's coached Cam Newton. He also coached Trent Dilfer in the 90s and Eli Manning in the twilight of Eli Manning's career. Those three guys have completely different skill sets and will never be confused for one another. Dilfer and Eli maybe can be confused for each other if you just did the silhouette test, right? But I think that background helps him a lot. I don't expect the offense to struggle because when you have 16 at quarterback, I think that's going to help a lot. But there's a chance that if the offensive line doesn't perform very well, you can see their production capped. That's what you don't want to see. And then that's where the test for Mike is to see how well the rest of the offense can fit, adjusting to a certain deficiency, if that's what it is on the football field. So we talked about Mike Shula, and want to talk about Clayton White a little bit because the perception of him from last year to this year, significantly different going into the season. His track record for development only getting better. What do we expect from him, and what does his history tell us when the early game continues? A week from today, It'll officially be that time. The Game Summer Golf Classic, sponsored by Krager Showrooms, formerly The Nest in the Vista. Friday, August 22nd at Charwood Golf Club. Tee time is at 9 a.m. Registration will start at 7:30 a.m., but you got to pay for a team first, $400 a team. And to be able to do that, you need to call 803-755-2000 and press number 2 to sign up. Onion sausage will be served for breakfast. There's going to be a mimosa bar from Saki's Wine and Spirits and Firehouse Subs for lunch. So if you come hungry, you will leave fulfilled. They have prizes, and the golf gun is back, as menacing as we can make that one sound. We'll go back to our AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Andy is on the line with us right now. Andy, good morning. Welcome to the early game, sir.
Hey, guys. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, fantastic. It's Friday.
You made me think about something that I haven't thought about, like the kids getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But they're getting paid now, so they got a lot more to lose.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And also, they're getting paid now, so they could get in more trouble than they,
There's
so
two sides to that coin.
Interesting Yeah, so I just hang up and listen on y'all's thoughts. But I was like, well, yeah, they're getting money, but, they could also buy more toys to get in trouble. So I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
That's that's a good point, Andy. And that's, two sides to that coin, too. That's really where it comes down to just individuals, and it's hard to really group a lot of people in certain ways because some people, some people get in trouble out of boredom. Some get in trouble because they have the resources to get themselves in trouble they couldn't previously get themselves into before they had that type of money. So there's two sides to that coin, and I'm curious as to what it is about, at least Georgia's program, for example, right? They have probably the most glaring issue with certain players right now getting in trouble off the field. I don't know if that really stems from income or if it stems from being young and dumb. Also a big element of that, too. Now, I never got in a ton of trouble, but being young and dumb got me in trouble a lot of times back when I was in school. Young and dumb and being really bored is a dangerous concoction, Jen.
Yeah, it can be just a little bit. And you came through the ranks probably when there wasn't quite as much social media emphasis. Was there some, at that point?
Like when I was in college, I graduated high school in 2013. Yeah. So I got myself in trouble at school in college, mostly by just not showing up to certain classes and thinking I can get away with certain things that I got away with. And, before graduating high school, learned a lot of those lessons the hard way, but a lot of that came from boredom. A lot of it came from a newfound freedom of adulthood that I couldn't wrangle in and handle yet. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of these kids, it's maybe the same way. Some of them are away from home for the first time. You don't have to go to bed at 9 or 10 because mom was not telling you to do so. I used to make the joke all the time when I was 18, 19 years old. I was like, yeah, I want to have ice cream at 9 o'clock right now without eating dinner because my mom can't tell me I can't. That was a prevailing thought that I had.
Yeah, it's funny how that how your priorities kind of shift, or what things you find to be really a symbol of independence. And but you're right. I mean, think when you went to college and the whole thing about all the different things that you're experiencing and that independence, and then couple that with playing football and all of the pressures with all of that, you still have sort of an immature brain, I would think, a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
So
isn't done developing until 25?
Yeah, exactly. So I hope mine's still developing, but
yes, same. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be better than this.
Oh man, no kidding. But yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. I think bad choices can happen, but you just hope that they're not so bad that they can't recover.
And thankfully here at South Carolina, I don't think the Gamecocks will ever win the Fulmer Cup, which they don't keep up with anymore. At least I don't think. And that's where somebody, I think is Reddit, would keep up with all of the arrests from certain teams and have them on a point system based on the severity of charge. And the team or the program that accumulated the most points at the end of the year would win the Fulmer Cup, because Tennessee teams in the late 90s and early 2000s were essentially mirrored what Georgia's done in terms of just players getting in trouble off of the field.
What a great award to win.
Yeah, the prestigious Fulmer Cup.
Let's find some big word to say crap.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, not an award you want to win. I don't think South Carolina is ever going to do that. Because they do have a really good culture in place. They bring in a lot of really good players. And the thing is, they develop them not just as players, too. I gave you the stat about the draft picks that weren't blue chip players, but I think you develop them as people and leaders as well. I think that's one thing about Demetrius Knight that made him more of a valuable draft prospect. Wasn't just that he's good at football, and he definitely developed by the time he got here. But anytime Shane or Clayton or any of his teammates talked about him last year, they mentioned as much of the leadership stuff as they did just what he could do on a football field. And that's incredibly valuable. And there's the development on the field and off the field. Clayton White was really good at developing players on the field, and he's had a nice little evolution himself. We'll continue that discussion to start the second hour. And also, what is Virginia Tech and Brent Pry saying about their early season practices? We'll hear from him next on the early game.
It's Jen for Carolina Stone Craftsman, just outside Columbia in Chapin. When we did a little bit of remodeling in the house, changed up a couple of bathrooms, we needed some countertops for those, and it was recommended for us to go to Carolina Stone Craftsman. And we learned quickly they understand that, a kitchen or a bath project, those can be a significant investment, and they really work hard to make it a priority to deliver the most affordable granite, marble, and quartz while still delivering the highest of quality and customer service. And I can assure you, fabulous all the way around. Their showroom, beautiful. They have an outdoor showroom and some outdoor hardscapes that they can help you with as well. And every step of the process was absolutely fabulous. We have no complaints and would use them again and again. Carolina Stone Craftsman, make sure you check them out. Tell them Jen Jensen sent you. They're family owned and operated. Carolina Stone Craftsman, just beyond Columbia and Chapin and beyond your expectations. CarolinaStoneCraftsman.com. No accidents to report, so happy Friday so far. And yeah, the forecast is looking pretty good. Maybe just a couple of pop-up thunderstorms this afternoon or this evening. 93 is the high that we are anticipating. 91 tomorrow, 92 on Sunday. Tomorrow, a couple isolated thunderstorms could be possible, but then we hit a stretch of sunny skies through about Wednesday and lows in the, or highs, I should say, in the low 90s. But currently, it's a nice start to start the weekend of sorts. 76 currently on 107.5 The Game.
Hour number 2 of the early game starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Jen Jensen. She's not Preston Thorne because Preston Thorne, ladies and gentlemen, has left the building. But this, friend of the program, friend of the station at 107.5 The Game, Lulu Kesson. Lulu, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Were you able to wake up with these, or was there that little self-loathing period that happens when the alarm goes off that early?
A little bit of both. I woke up easier than I thought, but I definitely hated myself for a second.
That still doesn't go away.
That still happens, and I've done this for 10 years.
You've been doing it for a lot longer than
Started when I was 12.
Yeah, it is not. I'm still getting accustomed to it, but at least it's not my first rodeo because I did intern at a morning show with a significantly longer drive or commute, so I have at least some experience. But we're good to have you in the studio. This is your first time in the studio. We've had you on the phone all the time. This is your first time actually in the studio.
Yeah, I was jealous when Saul's got to go on, and he was telling me how fun it was to be in the studio, and I was like, hey, I got to be next. So
You have to be next.
yeah, this is fun.
But here we are. We are fulfilling it right now. And we'll go ahead and start with the Firehouse Subs text line just because this came over. I wasn't like expecting to talk about this. But Jeff texts in and says, any news on our running back eligibility? And I think we can all answer this in unison. 3, 2, 1. No. We do not. End of report. Sorry, Jeff. We wish we could give you more. But we may not get a word on Rasul Faison's eligibility until, who knows? At this point, it might be 5 minutes before kickoff. It might be halftime of the Virginia Tech game. It could be the Clemson game. I don't know. It might even be after the season. They might give him a year of eligibility just for giggles. I don't know. At this point, I think it's become a fool's errand to try to get into the brain of the NCAA in their eligibility office, because if we don't know by now, and the paperwork was filed in January, we may never know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's getting closer and closer. It's hard to believe that a decision will be made in the next 2 weeks at this point.
I'm not banking on it. How about that? And I have a feeling at the facility, they are also not banking on it at all. But we're, 2 weeks into practice? Time just keeps on flying by. About halfway through it. We're 16 days until the start of the regular season. Lulu, what's kind of the biggest takeaways I think you've had so far from being able to be in the building and covering practices here early on?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway so far is Shane's confidence in naming Luke Doty QB2, and I say that because he was so specific about, every position's a competition last year, and he still is that way for a lot of others. So I'm sort of curious the mentality and sort of what's behind that, and what's behind sort of that, not necessarily confidence, but just the willingness to be super open about where Doty stands in that QB2 race. And a lot of people obviously don't want to think about Lenoris getting hurt, but he missed some time last year. So that's kind of the angle I'm looking at that. And then probably the other thing is just the defense as a whole. I've talked to Clayton White. I've talked to some other players on the defensive side of the ball that are just, repeating the same thing. Like, we're sick and tired of hearing about everyone who left. We still got a lot of talent here. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned in the last few weeks.
And the scrimmage I thought was interesting. No turnovers on the offense in 117 plays. Good sign. Don't know what it tells you about the defense. There's only so much that we can learn from some of these practices. But judging by Shane's tone, I don't think he's disturbed by what he saw over the weekend in that scrimmage. So that made me curious as to what is Virginia Tech talking about in terms of how their practices are going. And listening to a press conference from this week, Brent Pry said something really interesting. This is cut 3 on today's list, Jen. Brent Pry described their latest practice in a very interesting way.
It's a good day, really competitive. Guys making plays, some guys still emerging, fighting for spots. Biggest thing, we were a little lopsided. One period would be really good for the offense and not so good for the defense. And then a couple periods later, it'd be the exact opposite. And my message to the guys, we gotta answer. So when we can't let a period get away from us. And one side kind of just take over the whole thing and dominate the period. So we still got some growing to do that way, but they're coming. Good day.
The choice of the word lopsided I found to be intriguing. And for a team like Virginia Tech and their construct, where there's a lot of transfer players, there's a whole lot, and they don't return a ton of starting production, but they have some intriguing pieces. There's an element that when you have that many new players, getting them all on the same page at the same time can be tricky, and that might be a project for some teams that takes until late September or early October. And it sounds like there's still some things that they're trying to figure out. Now, later on, he does talk about how definitive he is about what their offensive line looks like. They don't really have any battles on the offensive line. They like the depth, whatever, a lot of coach speak, and there's really not a ton of position battles, but there's a lot of consistency issues is really the gist I got from that yesterday. Comparing that and contrasting it with what we hear from Shane, what really sticks out to you in terms of just how the practices are going from how the coaches are describing it?
Well, I think every coach has their own way and sort of is very particular about how they want to approach preseason and talk about things that media isn't open to seeing with their own eyes. And I think that Virginia Tech is probably a team that is going to look a lot different in November than they are September. That's not to say that, if South Carolina beats them in a couple weeks, that they wouldn't at the end of November. But to the points that you're making, I think with just sort of developing as a team with a lot of transfers, it takes time. And I think that his choice in doing that is probably a little bit of realistic. I mean, I don't know him well enough to detect the tone or his word choice, but I do think that it almost sounded like a little bit of kind of honest fatigue in the sense of hey, we're not right there yet, and that's okay, and that's sort of where we're at. And obviously honesty, that's not to say a coach that comes back to media and says all good things is lying, but I think that being transparent about where a program is, with some time still left, says I think they're doing it for a reason, and I can't specifically name why he might be, but I think he's being just realistic about where the program is.
Yeah, realistic, and I think there's a lot of optimism there too, because he still prefaced it with good practice today, but there's still some lopsided things that offense one day is ahead of the defense, one day or one period the defense is that far ahead of the offense. It sounds like there's still some coaching optimism that I feel like most coaches just naturally possess. But the choice of the word choice of lopsided, I felt was just the really interesting part. And once we get to this game, there's a week one mystique with everybody, and it's always how you show up with a handful of practices before you get in a situation where the bullets start flying, because you can scrimmage all day long. You can scrimmage multiple times a week, but it's hard to really simulate what there is in a game until you get to that point. And for a week one matchup where if you're Virginia Tech, you're playing an SEC team, which they're starting their season off with 2 of them because they have Vanderbilt at home the next week after that. But doing that in a game that's, nationally televised, neutral field in an NFL stadium, these type of games are so hard to predict that I do find myself sometimes trying to cling to certain word choices by coaches when it comes to saying how ready they're going to be for week one.
Yeah, and I think Shane is somebody who is very open about the fact that he does not love week ones. I've been kind of meaning to ask him about this because it's sort of balancing your approach where you don't want your you're realistic about your expectations, but you don't want your standards to lower. And you want to approach week one like week 10, but at the same time, it's not going to be that way. And a week one team is probably, I'm not saying if you're great week one, you're going to peak, but there's sort of always that kind of constant all right, I have to remind myself that it's early and it's almost impossible to predict. And I'm with Shane in the sense of preseason games would be helpful. I think for everybody, and I'm pro that mentality because, like you said, whatever you see, good or bad, it's almost impossible to predict.
It is, and I think LSU is the perfect example of this. We had a call in the first hour asking us, because the caller thinks Carolina and Clemson both win their first game of the year. But he's like, who wins by the most? Who probably looks more comfortable in that win? And I don't think it's far-fetched to say that Clemson ends up looking more comfortable just because I have serious doubts about LSU in season openers. They haven't won a season opener since 2019. That feels like ages ago now. And Brian Kelly has, at least to his credit, they have played really good teams to start the season every year since he's been the head coach at LSU, but they've come out flat in all of them. 2 losses to Florida State on neutral fields, and then last year they go to Las Vegas and Southern Cal and Miller Moss tear them up in the second half of that game. I don't know if there is a trend here that is pointing towards them just not preparing well enough in the weeks leading up to week one, because in those same years, every year that Brian Kelly's been the coach at LSU, they lose that first game and they eliminate so much of their margin for error, but they do look a lot better during the season before then dropping a game or two they probably shouldn't, but that's a whole lot separate issue. But the fact of the matter is they've come out flat in these last 3 years with him as head coach, and I don't know exactly if that's just an issue that they have with the preparation process leading up to a first game.
this might be a really bad take, but LSU kind of reminds me of like the Bengals. I feel like the Bengals can never come out strong week one.
There's a
like
Joe Burrow factor there. Yeah, there's a common denominator.
Yeah. Even just thinking about sort of, you have to, if you're Brian Kelly, you have to look at the approach. You have to look at what's going on in the offseason, and I think that it starts way beyond August. I think it starts in January. It starts in May. There's dynamics at play when you're consistently, forming a bad habit when it comes to how ready can you be? Can you win a game? I think South Carolina is a good example in the sense last year was pretty ugly. The week one win against Old Dominion was pretty ugly. That said, a win is a win. And when you have a quarterback like Lenora Sellers, who clearly just needed 2-3 games under his belt,
just reps. He just needed reps.
He just needed reps. And I was reading back one of my stories that I wrote last year, sort of about Lenore Sellers just needed time, and Shane was always the biggest advocate about that. And I do think if we're talking, I heard you guys earlier talking about culture and everything. Shane is realistic, but I think he also is very supportive of why things are happening to his players. And I think really early on he was like, this is why Lenoris isn't ready yet. He's 19 and has not really played a college game. I think when you're Brian Kelly and it's a team-wide sort of thing and the end result is consistently an L, that's where you have to sort of look within. And I'm very curious. I'm excited that we have a Sunday game so we can watch this Clemson LSU game.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things I'm really excited about is to be able to watch a whole day's slate of games. And then on my drive back, probably just find a way to put Notre Dame Miami on in the car and listen to that on the way back because it's an incredible week one slate. But the Bengals comparison with LSU is so interesting, too, because I think I saw I think it was Get Up, they showed that the Bengals in the last 3 years in weeks 1 and 2 are 1-5.
Yeah.
They get off to some really bad starts.
Do you watch the quarterback? Have you started season 2 at all?
No, I haven't.
I will say that comp was fresh on my mind because Joe Burrow's featured, but obviously from Massachusetts, I'm realistic of how bad the Patriots are. And so replaying that Bengals, the Bengals losing to the Patriots week 1 last year, you sort of have to sit there and reflect what is going on where we're not able to come together as a team enough to win, our first game of the year.
That's the interesting thing about this South Carolina team too, is that under Shane, they've had some struggles in September. But the hallmark of a lot of his teams is you get better throughout the season, and they usually have Novembers to remember, which is what he touts during the season. Even in the 5-7 year, they did win, 3 straight to get them within a game of bowl eligibility. They played their best football at the end of the season. This year, the schedule is so much more manageable in the month of September that there's really more pressure to win this early before you get into kind of a more murderer's row part of it. So the development needs to maybe be happening more at warp speed than maybe it did last year where you didn't really find your stride as a team until mid-October.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think if we're going to, talk or think about where can Shane take this program next, I think a really successful September is sort of that direction. And obviously it's a new team this year in several ways, but I think that obviously Sellers has, the young excuse isn't there anymore. A lot of these guys, Dylan Stewart, they're not young anymore. And so exactly to your point where the schedule falls this year, it's really important that they get off to a really, really strong start.
And that's kind of our theme of the day is coaching and development. Development had to be at warp speed. We already talked about Mike Shula a little bit. Didn't get to Clayton White, so we'll do that next. Talking about his development as a coach, because our perspective of Clayton here in August of 2025, a little different than it was in October of 2023. There's been some player development, there's been some coaching development, and we'll get into that next here in the early game. We've been talking all morning about how coaches develop football players, but if Midstate Roofing was a coach, they develop the best roofs, installing the best bonded systems that keep your operation or your house, whatever building you're working on here, dry and safe long into the future. And just like any good coach, they are always there for you. And even in hours where you might not expect, because you can call them after hours at 803-356-1919 and speak to an on-call technician, or if you just call during hours, you can speak to a Mid-State Roofing member, and they can walk you through what they can do for all the specific needs of your building, whether it's a high-rise hospital or if the job is manufacturing to industrial. They can walk you through that, and they can give you that protective guarantee, something we're all looking for when it comes to the safety of our home or business. They can provide that to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, 803-356-1919, or you can always go online at midstateroofing.com. If you have a leak, let Midstate Roofing take a peek. The big theme for today, coaching, because I think we've tackled about every aspect of this South Carolina football team going into the 2025 season. The exception of maybe taking a really close look at coaching and player development. And Clayton White's a part of that. A lot of players have developed at South Carolina. And for those who might have missed it, since Shane took over in 2021, he has had 11 non-blue chip players drafted, which are just anybody that's not a 4 or 5-star player, drafted since 2022. Lulu, would you like to take a guess how many of those players were defensive players?
I'm going to guess 9.
You're really close, 7.
Oh, I thought 7 might have been too low because there were 5 last year. So.
Yep, and all 5 of those players last year, 3 stars or lower. Well, they were all 3 stars. So TJ Sanders, Nick Emenwari, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway, all 3-star players coming out of high school. So that's a good chunk of it. But to add to that, Darius Rush at corner, Marcellus Dial at corner just last year. So the development on defense specifically is one of the things that makes this program a draw for players that are really good, even if they're blue chip players coming out of high school or transfer players looking to make that jump to the NFL. You can look at what Kyle Kennard did. You can look at what Demetrius Knight did, and it shows a pretty good proof of concept. But I think specifically something that maybe doesn't get talked about enough in terms of just development within the program is what Clayton White's done since October of 2023. Let's take ourselves back in time a little bit, hop in the time machine, back it up to 2023 to when Florida came here and you lose a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter and your defense just gets eviscerated by Graham Mertz and Ricky Pearsall. I will forever remember that game as the Ricky Pearsall game because that guy almost made himself a first-round pick with how well he played in that game right there. Wasn't Nick Emenwari's best day, but I think a lot of people and even coaches learned something about themselves from that moment. The defense then from then on had incredible performances against Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and then at the very end of the season when they had to play Clemson, they didn't give up an offensive touchdown. Team lost, but they did not give up an offensive touchdown in that game. Only 9 offensive points scored, which should have been good enough to win that game. But you saw an evolution in Clayton White, some changes in how they did things defensively, and then you bring in a couple of players from the transfer portal that became legitimate difference makers. You saw TJ Sanders make a jump from being a player that showed flashes to showing those every single game. So my thought is, I've talked a lot about how the players have developed in this program, but I think Clayton White as a defensive coordinator has developed equally as much, and that's going to make him such a highly coveted potential head coach one day if that's a road he decides to actually pursue.
Yeah, and I think that judging, when you look at coordinators and when you look at, any sport, an assistant coach with a lot of influence, responsibility, like in-season drastic changes are really difficult. Making positive changes and maintaining them for an entire year, it says a lot about what you can do and your ability to sort of read your team, the vibe, for lack of a better word. And going back to the Brian Kelly thing, I think Clayton recognized a lot of what was happening was internal. He didn't sit there and say, oh, it's the personnel, or, oh, we just need to get this, that, the other thing in the portal. Obviously, he's always thinking about that. But I think reflecting on the fact that something isn't going wrong in which we can deal with it right now. We can address it right now. And I think that's very impressive. And another thing, Shane obviously most power, most influence, head coach. And I think the testament of a really good assistant coach or coordinator is how do you find yourself within someone else's system. And I think that Clayton has done a really good job of respecting the way that Shane runs things, but also making sure that he isn't losing himself in doing so. And I think that he probably moves a little bit, in silence a little bit more than Shane does. And I think the defense as a whole tends to do that. I think a lot of players are not necessarily more reserved, but I think that their development happens behind the scenes and they're not always vocal about it. And that's fine. Everyone's different. But for example, I talked to Shane one time where he said that he will sit in front of the entire team and name every single player. And Clayton's like, yeah, I have to do that too. I've stood up in front of the team and named every single player on offense and special teams. There's a dynamic there. There's a willingness to be, okay, I'm, not the most vocal in every team meeting, but I will respect the fact that my head coach wants me to know this, that, the other thing. And so I think Clayton, that's why he was able to sort of very quickly make a turnaround, is because he was very sure of himself, but also very willing to adapt and recognize, okay, what am I doing wrong? Where am I lacking? And how can we get better?
Yeah, and that's what gives, I guess, Gamecock fans, or at least it should give them, some optimism that a lot of the question marks on defense will be answered relatively early on, and that there is a legitimate next man up mentality. We played a clip yesterday of Ben Watson on the SEC Network, Bulldog Ben, as Preston likes to call him, talk about or really hammer home that his worry meter is at an 8 for South Carolina's defense because of losing 8 of your 11 top tacklers from last year, and that's completely understandable. I think skepticism in any situation like that, when there's not a ton of continuity, is fairly warranted. But if you're a Gamecock optimist, I think you can look at just that track record of development, and you can look at guys who maybe are a little more raw or don't have a ton of sample size about being really good at this level. Someone like Sean Murphy is who I find really intriguing. Started a career at Alabama, was hurt last year at Florida State, played in the last 4 games in what is a lost season in that program, but got better through those 4 games, and they really liked what they saw in those 4 games. They identified something that they can use to be able to make him a really good player. And I know they're going to lean on him a lot. And with Clayton White doing a lot of work with those linebackers, I think you can reasonably expect Sean Murphy to have a pretty good breakout this year.
Yeah, I asked Clayton, I was like, I know it's early, but like any signs of a replacement for Demetrius Knight in terms of like off the field impact and leadership. And he's like, Sean Murphy might be showing some shades there a little bit. He's, you know, he was so funny. He was like, he's engaged. He's not married with kids, which is a little bit different, but there is sort of that older, mature dynamic. And I think that here's the thing. Yes, there always should be a little bit of worry when you're losing a lot of people, but at the same time, it's not like Kyle Kennard and Demetrius Knight were 5-star recruits out of high school that we had for, you know, that South Carolina had for 4 years, that it's able to just be like, oh no, we're losing, you know, the best player we'll ever get in 10 years. Nobody could really predict their impact. And that's why I'm sort of looking at this defense in a similar light. It's these transfers and these young players who have the potential to make a huge impact. Like, at this time last year, I wasn't necessarily confident in some of the unknowns as well. And so you kind of have to look at that way, especially in 2025 and the way the portal goes is, you know, a 5-star portal recruit can, you know, be a dud compared to a 2-star. It just depends on how the program develops them.
That's the thing, too. Like, I always think of whenever a previous 5-star player that played at a place like Alabama transfers somewhere, it could be one of 2 things. It's either that room that they played in was so talented, they just had a hard time getting on the field because you're playing with other future All-Pros, or there's a reason you weren't getting onto the field compared to those guys, and that reason might keep you from being a productive player at the next level. That's what makes this evaluation thing so hard, because not like Shane and Clayton can go back to his practices at Alabama or Florida State. They get the sample size they have, and they have to identify these traits, which kind of makes that a little bit harder. But at the same time, I think they're starting to really find a knack for those guys who have a couple of things that are unteachable, and the things that maybe are teachable, they're able to instill in them to make them productive college football players whenever they're actually here in Columbia.
Yeah, that's a good point about Alabama. And honestly, I kind of compare that in the same light of like a South Carolina women's basketball player. Like, you know, a system that is so hard to carve out time, a name for yourself, and it's a higher level than most other schools. And so you have maybe a player like a Sakima Walker who just kind of did nothing wrong and was very talented, but understood, I'm going to be number 2 to Joyce Edwards. I have 1 year left. I might as well go somewhere else. It's that question of
go to Cal and get that education and have a really good-looking diploma once you're done playing basketball.
Exactly. Probably a little bit of better weather, too, in my opinion. But, yeah, it's the dynamic of, like, okay, when they're coming from these SEC programs, you're like, all right, was there a reason they weren't playing? Is there a reason they're leaving? And a lot of times South Carolina's proven that, like, hey, they just wanted something different.
Yeah, and for this football team, too, that's why I'm excited for even some of the guys that weren't, you know, transfer players, like Fred J.R. Johnson, right? Brian Thomas Jr., Desmond Umazulu, those guys who have now been in the program for a year. It makes it a little more exciting to see exactly how much they're able to learn going into this season. But going into this weekend, it's a football weekend now. These games don't count, but there's something to look forward to in all of them. We'll get you ready for the NFL preseason this weekend next on the Early Game. I tell you about my friends at Pro Swing all the time about how fun it is to use their Golf Zone simulators, but you can join for a good cause this weekend. You can join Pro Swing for Swing for a Cause Course and Sim Challenge. It's a 2-day charity golf event supporting the Prisma Health Children's Hospital in Columbia. The best part, it's open to all skill levels, like mine, which is very low. It's really bad. It's embarrassing. But for a cause, it's worth doing. And the unique event, it features the indoor simulator at Pro Swing on August 16th, 17th, so that's tomorrow and Sunday, followed by the traditional 18-hole, two-person Captain's Choice Tournament at Cobblestone Golf Course or Golf Club on August 21st. So that'll be next week. And after the round at Cobblestone, they'll announce the combined results and crown the overall champions of the Course and Sim Challenge. So enjoy the fun contest, delicious food, great prizes, and a day of community and giving back. Find more info at proswingcolumbia.com.
Couple of accidents to let you know about: Jessamine Road at Highway 1, Oak Drive near Augusta Highway, and Shop Road at Atlas. Also, Highway 1 heading into Lexington before the flea markets. stay right because the left lane is blocked. We're looking for a high today of 93 with some afternoon storms, 91. Much of the same tomorrow before sunshine on Sunday. 76 right now.
Oh, we're only 1 week away. 1 week away from the Game Summer Golf Classic, sponsored by Kreger Showrooms, formerly The Nest in the Vista. Friday, August 22nd at Charwood Golf Club. Tee time is 9 a.m. Registration starts at 7:30 a.m. In order to be able to register, you do have to pay $400 for a team. And to do that, you call 803-755-2000 and press 2 to sign up. They'll have onion sausage for breakfast, a mimosa bar from Saki's Wine and Spirits, and Firehouse subs for lunch. They have prizes. And Lulu Kesson, the golf gun is back. When I say the golf gun, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much fear does that instill in you?
I'd say like a 6.
It sounds ominous.
Yeah.
I have yet to see it. Jen has yet to see it. We have.
I've just looked up online what it looks like, but kind of looks like an automatic weapon of sorts. But like, what are we shooting out of it? Are they actually golf balls?
I assume so. I hope so.
But why?
Is this? Do you shoot it in lieu of driving?
Okay, see, that's what I wonder, because sometimes they'll have like those T-shirt guns where we're shooting out shirts and things, but obviously, I don't know. We need Terry Ford to weigh in on this.
We do. We don't need him to handle it, though.
Oh, I want him having nothing to do with any kind of power tools,
Yes.
golf guns, anything like that.
Dangerous game. They let him cook at the Kreger Showrooms, formerly known as The Nest, and I thought that was dangerous enough.
Yeah, access to flames and electricity.
Anything flammable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a
not
dangerous
smart.
game.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be comfortable. Or if he has it, make sure you stand behind him.
Yeah.
But if
And I don't know that I would eat anything once he's cooked it either, but
right.
just saying.
Yes, foodborne illnesses, not very fun.
Yeah.
But if anything, just go show up on August 22nd. So that's a week from today at Charwood Golf Club, just to see what that bad boy looks like.
I know, right? I'm really fascinated.
Really building up the mystique and the intrigue here.
It's probably like, probably like my little Nerf gun or something, but we're making it look really and sound really good.
That's what you do is you build the intrigue and you get people to go see it.
That's what radio is all about.
Yeah.
Theater of the mind.
That's right. That's what we're trying to build.
Yes.
Here on the early game. It's almost kind of like the theater of the mind. How much Joe Milton have you watched in the preseason, or have you seen online? Because Preston and I have been way too fascinated about the mystery. Not even really mystery. There's no mystery. If you watched him play in college, you know there's not much mystery to it. But NFL casuals that are big Cowboy fans that see all the cool stuff he does in the preseason, and then this guy with this crazy alien arm seemingly can't throw it in the same zip code as his receivers. But sometimes he does, and it looks really cool. It's the ultimate magic 8-ball of a football player.
Yeah, I can't join you too much in that, but I haven't watched a lot at all, but your commentary on it now makes me want to.
Oh, and all the things that there are to look forward to in football that is being played. Now it's preseason football, but it is football, and there's stuff to look forward to always on the bandwagon of the Joe Milton experience because of what it is on a weekly basis. And I believe the Cowboys this week, and now most of these games you can end up seeing at least a replay on NFL Network, but the Cowboys this week, they're playing the Ravens, and I don't know if that's going to be. It's probably not going to be televised nationally, but the clips show up on the internet all the time, and that's what's a lot of fun. But if there's a preseason team to watch, Lulu, for South Carolina Gamecock fans, it's the New Orleans Saints. Now, that is unfortunately a team I watched in the regular season, even if there are no Gamecocks playing, and they're not going to be really good, but they're going to have a few intriguing Gamecock players on there. Spencer Rattler fighting for a starting job right now with Tyler Shuck. I think Shuck probably will get the start against Jacksonville on Sunday, but I'd really like to see Spencer Rattler take that job, not just because of what we do here, but because I still firmly believe he is a better quarterback than Tyler Shuck. I'm not going to let that bomb that he threw in the second half of that game against the Chargers last Sunday deter me from not being really high on him, because I saw the pick 6 too, and that was ugly.
Yeah, that would be awesome for Spencer. Obviously, his journey is one that most people here know very well. And Torricelli, the Saints could be loaded with some former Gamecocks for sure. And I realized that the weekend that South Carolina plays LSU, the Patriots play the Saints next Sunday.
Are you going?
As of right now, no. That doesn't.
I'm going. I'll be there. Yeah, Beer and I are going. We're going to get tickets and we're going to go because she went to school in LSU, so we're going. Together, so she can see some friends and some and everybody else out there. And I was like, oh, if the Saints are in town and they're playing the Superdome, I got to go. So I've never been to the Superdome for a Saints game. I've been to a Sugar Bowl, but I've never been to a Saints game. They do play the Patriots.
Yeah, I'm actively trying to figure out how I make that work. The flight has been booked, but I still think I could make it work in some capacity.
You can still, it'll be the Elijah Lulu Bowl that Sunday after Carolina and LSU play. And there can be, I think Torricelli Simpkins makes the team. Like, they like him a lot. Everything that I've read, they really like him a lot. We saw what he did here. He was the best offensive lineman last year, especially when it comes to run blocking. And the wild thing, they're playing him at center, and he's been playing great at that position. We saw him at tackle last year, but he was awesome at center on Sunday. Like, that is a man possessed in run blocking.
And I think that, like, if Hard Knocks was on the Saints, I think that Torricelli would be someone that people would really love. I wrote a story last year, I guess, about him wanting to be a marine biologist if football doesn't work out, and how it started with his love for turtles and how his grandma taught him how to swim, and he felt calm in the water, and that just attracted him to marine biology and marine wildlife, like, for the rest of his life. And I think, one, being realistic about the fact that football isn't forever will always benefit any athlete, especially in the NFL, where you see injuries and season and career-ending injuries so frequently. But he is a really, really nice person, and I think that his personality translates well to NFL play, and I think that if he makes a team, he's going to be really, really well liked.
I think he makes that Saints team. And I want him to, not just because, obviously, I enjoyed my interactions with him last year. And like you mentioned, he's got an incredible backstory. And he's got a really good backup plan for whenever his days playing in the NFL are over, because the age-old saying in the NFL is the NFL stands for not for long. So he's got that to fall back on. But as somebody who watched him play last year and really liked how that offense, when the offensive line kind of improved throughout the year, a lot of that was Torricelli Simpkins. And he made himself really intriguing to NFL teams. And I thought he could have gotten himself drafted, but he goes undrafted. The Saints pick him up, and he played so well on Sunday. I saw a lot of the clips that people would post of, like, the all-22 angles where you really get to see offensive linemen in a better angle. And there was one play, it was like a design quarterback draw. He snaps the ball. He knocks off, like the nose guard, and he immediately goes to the second level and just knocks the crap out of somebody else, too, at the second level, and just creates a wide open hole for, I think it was for Tyler Shuck to be able to run through. I like his chances of making the team. And I like Kai Kroger's chances of making the Saints, too, because Lord knows they're going to punt a lot with that offense. No matter who the quarterback is, they're going to punt. There's going to be a lot of growing pains there. But Kai Kroger got 3 punts in on Sunday. And compared to James Burnip, Kroger's probably the better option, had a better game on Sunday. There's a really good chance that Torricelli and Kai Kroger end up making that roster.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would maybe rather live in New York, but if we're talking about just NFL upgrades, like, Kai got a good one going from the Jets to the Saints, in my opinion, especially if he has some former friends on the team. And with Torricelli, another example of what we were talking about before, just a player that no one knew was going to be really great coming in and was developing really, really fast. And as you were mentioning, it felt like game-by-game improvement. And by that Clemson game, you sort of saw somebody that looked a lot different than Old Dominion Week 1, and a testament to his work ethic for sure in that regard.
Now, normally at 7:45, we have Preston or Reston, or Impreston or Depreston. But with Lulu being in the studio today, we have to do a segment that was actually a Preston Thorne original, Lulu or Delulu. Apparently, that's something that the kids refer to as delusional. You learn something every day. We've already had our mini vocabulary lesson on this show. But Lulu or Delulu, next here on the early game. It's not Preston or Reston. It's not DePreston or Impreston. It's Lulu or Delulu. We're going to put Lulu Kesson here from the Greenville News in or through the ringer here. And it's a simple game. Nothing too complex. I'm just going to give a take. And Lulu's going to say if she agrees with it or it's delusional. Or as the kids say, Delulu. I'm picking up slang every single day. So we'll start off with this Carolina football team, Lulu. South Carolina winning 10 games.
Oh, gosh. I'm going to lean more towards Delulu. I wouldn't say it's delusional, but for the point of the game,
yes, for the point of the game.
Yeah,
yes.
I would lean more towards 8 or 9.
I feel like that's right, too. I mean, we went through, somebody tweeted the other day, it was like, South Carolina's 13th in the AP poll, but they're over under 7.5. Is this like some type of bias? I'm like, no. I mean, if you look at the history of teams that are 13th, a good chunk of them. I mean, I went back and looked. The teams that are ranked 13th at the beginning of the season, usually now they almost guaranteed to win at least 8 games because 9 of 11 of them have won at least 8 games, but only 3 of them have ever finished the season ranked, but still win at least 8 games. Only 2 of those times in those 11 years in the college football playoff era have they not had a winning record. So history's on your side in terms of having a winning season. Now, if you can take that a little bit farther, which I know is their entire mantra this year, then maybe you can get yourself into the college football playoff with 9 wins. But it's still, history would tell you that it would make sense that they win something like 8 games. Lulu or Delulu, Rocket Sanders and Dale Von Campbell make the Chargers roster.
Lulu. I think that's going to happen. Or I think it very much can happen. That's not delusional at all.
Dale Von was awesome the other day. He got 4 for 72? And he didn't score a touchdown, but he did get a 2-point conversion. And Rocket ran all over the place. He was maybe the best player in that entire game last Sunday.
Yeah, and I love getting to watch the Texas A&M game and the Missouri game because those were both such huge games for Dale Von Campbell. They're really fun to watch.
Yeah, and, I still think if he doesn't kind of trip up a little bit in the Citrus Bowl, he scores on that play. But I think it's one of those things he is running so hard to get underneath that football that the turf monster wins a lot of those battles. But he got himself wide open on that pass. Dale Von Campbell showed a lot of flashes at the end of the year last year, and then he applied it at the NFL level, and he plays special teams. He does that really well. NFL teams love that. Some of those guys that play receiver in college go to the NFL, and you have to kind of coach them into being enthusiastic about playing special teams. The Chargers don't have to do that with Dale Von Campbell. But if the Chargers cut him, some team's going to pick him up because he can play special teams. And he can hit a little bit, too. He's not afraid to lay the lumber on somebody. Now, this one's a little closer to your heart here. Lulu or Delulu? The New England Patriots are in the playoffs within 2 years.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that's Delulu. I might have some haters back home, but I probably am a little bit more pessimistic about the Patriots than most, but I say no.
How much enthusiasm does Mike Vrabel give you about that team?
A lot. I won't lie, a lot. I just think that it's a really, really difficult. The NFL is so hard. There's incredible teams that are just trending in the right direction. Not to say the Patriots can't join those other teams eventually. Just 2 years, I'm going to lean on the side of Delulu. And hey, if they want to clip this and put it on the whiteboard, and I can be wrong. I can be wrong, but I think Vrabel was a great hire, and I'm excited to see what he does.
Be Lulaton board material at this point.
Good one. Nice. Yeah.
I'm the biggest Mike Vrabel believer on the planet. I mean, pound for pound, maybe one of the best coaches in the NFL. And the fact that he didn't get a job immediately upon his firing in Nashville was surprising to me because I know the last couple of years weren't very good. They fell off a cliff after week 11 or 12 of 2022. But that guy can coach, man. And the turnaround that they had, not many, organizations in sports can lose as many players as they did in the 2021 season and still be one of the 3 or 4 best teams in their conference. Like they had, I want to say they used about an additional 25 extra players that were outside the original roster because of injuries, and they still were able to piece it together. I think that guy is genuinely one of the best coaches in the world when it comes to football. Now, last one, Lulu or Delulu, South Carolina women's basketball team will be better this year than last year.
Yes, I'm pro that. I think that just if we're going to be super transparent. Like the guard talent that they have this year, I think can produce at a higher rate in terms of offense. And I think that's just sort of where they lacked. And they have a 6'6" center, which is what they needed.
Helps.
So
Yeah,
I think
that helps.
I do think they will be. Yeah, they'll be growing pains. If they lose a game, I'll still believe that they'll be better though than last year.
The Tanaya Latson thing's really interesting to me because she scored 25 points per game last year. Not going to do that this year, but I think she can be close. And I don't think if she does get close that it's anything, detrimental to what it is they do.
And that's not to say that they aren't going to have other guards or other people who can score, but she'll be great.
Yeah. I kind of believe that too. I mean, they should still be the favorites to end up winning the national championship next year. That's just one of those programs. I mean, they don't rebuild. They just reload on a year-to-year basis. Hour number 2 in the books. Hour number 3, we'll talk about the development track record of this coaching staff as it is the theme of the day, message board mayhem, and a whole lot more. That's next. We talked about Torricelli Simpkins making the Saints roster. I think he's going to make the Saints roster because he's a really good offensive lineman. If you think about it, the offensive line, or the roof, rather, of your home is kind of like the offensive line of your home. Protects your home from the elements. It keeps you cool in the summers. It keeps you warm in the winters. It helps out a lot. And Mid-State Roofing is kind of like, instead of maybe Torricelli Simpkins, who's good, like Orlando Pace, who's maybe the best. And they've been doing this for nearly 30 years. So it's like having Orlando Pace or Jonathan Ogden protect your quarterback, but for 30 years. From high-rise to hospitals, manufacturer to industrial, Mid-State Roofing designs and installs bonded systems with that protective guarantee that will keep your operation dry and running long into the future. And if you need to speak to a technician after hours, if an emergency comes up, you can hit them up at 803-356-1919 or online at midstateroofing.com, or you can call during hours and speak to a Mid-State Roofing member. Remember, if you have a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek.
Highway 1 heading towards Lexington before the flea market. The left lane is blocked, so you're going to want to stay right there. Highway 60 near I-26, an accident. Also I-26 westbound at Augusta Highway. I-77 northbound at Bluff Road. Still may be a little bit of a slowdown from an earlier tie-up. I-77 southbound at Garners Ferry Road, an accident. Jessamine at Highway 1. Oak Drive near Highway 1 and Shop Road at Atlas. So things have picked up a little bit for your Friday morning. Do be careful out there if you would. Looking for a high today of 93. Might see just a few afternoon storms pop up. Isolated storms tomorrow in the afternoon, 91 for the high. 92 on Sunday, and then we get a stretch of sunny skies for multiple days. 77 right now.
Hour number 3 of the early game starts right now. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Lulu Kesson. She's Jen Jensen. And we have one more hour for you heading up till 9 o'clock when Tyler Head and the Extra Point takes over with Jack Veltri. They've developed really well as a show. We're developing really well as a show. And the theme for today, head coaching, because we've covered this team pretty extensively in the weeks leading up to the regular season. But I think one thing we just haven't really talked about enough in terms of picking a theme for the show is the coaching staff. And what inspired me to do this, Lulu, was the Athletic and their college football staff tiered off college football coaches at the FBS level into 8 different tiers. And we'll read the ones up until we get to Shane Beamer. So they're Tier 1, multi-time champions. Really, there's only 2 fellas that fall into that category with Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney. Tier 2, established winners. There's a decent list of coaches there. Tier 3, high-level consistency. And then there's Tier 4, where we find South Carolina's Shane Beamer at rising stars and steady hands. Now, previously, they have the tier they were in last year. And last year, Shane Beamer was in Tier 6, which if you scroll down just a little bit, is show me seasons ahead. So last year, the Athletic considered the 24 season to be a show me season. And I think Shane Beamer showed some people some stuff by getting that team to win 9 games and really getting them on the cusp of the college football playoff. This year, I think there can be a jump to get him into that consistent winner tier or high-level consistency. And that's a long list right there. And a lot of these guys, really my only gripes on that one are Dan Mullen and Spencer Danielson from Boise State, because he's only been there. This is year number 2 for him. And I need to see it at least another year for him to say that he's a consistent winner there. And for Dan Mullen, I mean, he wasn't really a consistent winner at Florida. And that's the last place we saw him. And that's taken away what he did at Mississippi State. But for Shane to be able to make that next step, I think building upon a 9-win season and at least making sure that you can get back to showing you can replicate a year like that year over year. Because the last time he had that opportunity was 2023, coming off of an 8-win season. They ended up going 5-7, missing a bowl game entirely. I think this, if anything, not just a chance to make the college football playoff, make the program go farther per se, but it is a chance to show that this program can be a consistent winner and that Shane can be a program builder that is able to do it on a year-to-year basis.
There's a lot riding on this year for a couple different reasons. Obviously, a focus will be, can South Carolina make the college football playoff? That was a sort of talking point towards the end of the year. That was something that Shane was super passionate about. And last year's team, in some ways, was very, very close. Going into this year, exactly what you're saying, I think it's all about, can success be repeated? That doesn't mean the same type of wins. It just means repeating wins. And I think that South Carolina really needs to recognize the fact that learning from its mistakes from last year, like in some ways, it's already out there. Like the proof is out there. They know how to lose and they know how to win. It's can they learn from that, both good and the bad, and apply it going forward? I would say that's probably the biggest factor, because there's going to be things you can't control. There's going to be things like injuries. There's going to be emotional moments. There's going to be behavior from the other team. I think South Carolina needs to recognize a lot of it comes from within. And this is a huge season for Shane for exactly why you said the 22 to 23 jump was bad. So if we're talking about the future of this program as a whole, a lot is going into it. That's not to say Shane's by any way in the hot seat. It's just the dynamic of, if he actually wants this program to continue up, it has to start this year. It can't be the up and down again.
Because they're so close to a lot of different things. And this week we focused a lot on Bud Elliott from CBS Sports, his blue chip ratio. And South Carolina and Ole Miss are those two teams that are really close to breaking past that 50% threshold of having their last 4 recruiting classes be predominantly 4- and 5-star type players. That's when you get into consistent winning, is when you're recruiting at that level. So he's showing he is recruiting at that level, and he's really close to getting to that point. One thing that can draw more 4- or 5-star recruits is showing that you're a consistent winner and a developer of talent. And if you look at teams that do like to, I don't want to say live in the transfer portal, but do rely on it maybe more than other programs, the first 2 schools I think of are Ole Miss and Florida State. And you look at this list of tiers here, Mike Norvell and Lane Kiffin are both in the tier 3 of high-level consistency, and I think that should really be doubted when it comes to Mike Norvell, after considering last year was the train wreck to end all train wrecks. But part of when you do have a good mix of high-end high school talent and transfer portal acquisitions to kind of supplement certain position groups that just lose out on attrition year to year, because the college football nowadays it's a sport of constant roster turnover. Proving that you can have that model and win consistently is really important when it comes to what your perception is too. Like Lane Kiffin has used that to turn Ole Miss into at least a consistent winner at a level that Ole Miss doesn't usually win at consistently, right? He hasn't taken them to the college football playoff yet. I know last year they underachieved by not making the college football playoff because that roster was certainly built for it. They just didn't do it, but they still got to 9 wins. And at Ole Miss, that's not something that just happens every year. But Shane can put himself in that category by just replicating, even if they fall into that historical trend of teams that are preseason number 13 and win 8 games. I think that shows some good high-level consistency to maybe elevate how he's perceived nationally.
I agree entirely. And I think another thing is you look at, okay, who is leaving the South Carolina program? And I know that obviously losing Juice Wells was big, but if you're looking at it, people stay at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they lost some to the transfer portal, and I'm not trying to discredit those who have decided to leave. But at the same time, it says a lot about, people wanting to stay and play for Shane. And I think in this era of transfer portal madness, and obviously now with rev share, there's so many dynamics at play here. And when you have a coach that after 3 years is maintaining some decent talent, that also says a lot if we're talking about recruiting, because it's one thing to get a player here, but in 2025, 2026, 27, it's going to be a whole nother thing to keep players certain places. And I think that Shane is probably somebody that puts a lot of thought and effort into I know he puts a lot of thought and effort into the culture. And I think that all goes back to, okay, is he, he's maintaining this talent. Can he continue to win with it?
Yeah, the best part is that it's noticeable when players talk about it. I think one of the coolest parts about the press availability this week was Oscar Attaway alluding to one thing that made him want to play for Shane Beamer was that Office spoof video. Where they have, the sign that tells you how fast your car is going, and they're running out next to it, and they basically just recreated a scene from The Office. I remember he was talking about seeing that when he was in class at North Texas, and being like, "That's a coach I'd like to play for." And I think that sentiment works really well when you are dealing with players who might not be in a position they want to be in with the coach that they originally commit to. And the fact that this coaching staff retains a lot of those relationships and maintains them really well, to when if something's not working out, or maybe they're just not as happy as they thought they'd be, this is still a place they can come back to. And it's still a coaching staff that they can feel comfortable with trusting for the last couple of years, or maybe last year of their college eligibility.
And I think my thoughts overall, I've talked a lot about this in rev share and sort of how what being a football player in 2025 means in the college world. And I think as much as a player's maybe demanding or asking of a school, especially now quite literally financially, at the same time, a program asks a lot of a 19-year-old. And I think when you have a coach that isn't willing, I understand that some people just aren't open. Some people aren't talkers. I understand that dynamic. But I think if you're advocating for yourself to be a head football coach, especially in the SEC, especially at a really great program, you have to be willing to get to know who's on your roster. You have to be willing to understand that they are a person beyond football. And I think in the transfer portal and with the people that Shane has brought in, they're happily surprised by that. And I think that says a lot sort of about how unique Shane is in that, is that these players are coming from all these different schools. And Lenore's different example wasn't a transfer, but he could not believe that Shane legitimately knew everyone's name. And I don't mean to keep using that as an example, but I think that when we're talking about the dynamics at play here, you have to recognize that to be a successful coach, a lot of it, yes, is recruiting, but what does recruiting actually means? It means building trust and connections. And somebody might be really good at doing that, but if they don't understand that they have to maintain that once the player is committed to their program, that's where someone's 1 foot out the door. And you wonder what happens. Oh, why is blah, blah, blah leaving? It's maybe they didn't feel like you held the promise that you made when they were 17. All of a sudden they turn 20 and have a couple fumbles, and you don't want to talk to them about their siblings, their cat, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's one thing too. Like, we've been working college sports, for a while now. I have countless examples just off the record in my head of what a player has told me, what a coach promised them. And even hearing that promise, I'm like, buddy, you should have believed that wasn't going to happen, right? But so many times coaches will kind of fill recruits with this expectation that doesn't ever really become fulfilled because it's promising a lot. It's promising a lot that you can't guarantee. And I remember one of the discussions I had with Robbie Ashford before last season was his recruitment to South Carolina and what he appreciated about the coaching staff in the recruitment process, because, we all knew going into last year, Lenoris was going to be the guy. They talked highly of him. The word was always they were really impressed with what he showed in the practices in 2023 and that they're investing in him to be the quarterback of the future. And Robbie Ashford comes in as a guy who couldn't get on the field at Oregon, who struggled at times at Auburn and wasn't able to win out that job with limited college eligibility left. Comes to South Carolina. He said, the coach didn't promise me anything. He didn't say I was going to come here to be the starter, but he gave me an opportunity to compete in a league like this at a level like this. And he's like, I appreciate that honesty. That was something that Robbie told me was a key part to getting him here, was that type of honesty. And he believed him when they told him that you're going to have a chance to compete. We can't promise you you're going to start, but you have a chance to come in here and compete. And they gave him that chance. And Robbie, when he got to play, made a lot of those chances, especially that Akron game where he was Mike Vick for a quarter or for a half, right? But I think that's something that at least players at that level, at the high school level, or transfer players who have already been in college football for a couple of years, genuinely appreciate. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to maintain those type of relationships later on down the road, for even if they choose not to come to South Carolina, or if they do, it's maintained here within the locker room, and it makes it really enticing for them to be able to stay after a year.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get the exact quote right here, but in Dawn Staley's book, she said something in terms of recruiting, and it was something like, you can't talk to a wall at 3 a.m. Like, I'm going to be there for my players regardless, and I'm going to be upfront about that. If that isn't their style, if they don't want me in their business, that's fine, but that's who I am. I think Shane really buys into that. And I saw some comments, the whole cookie gate and defending Emily's cookies and everything, and a lot of comments were like, 2 weeks into the season, we're talking about cookies, we're so unfocused. Like, I understand that. Okay, sure. But at the same time, like, Shane knows what he's doing. And I'm not saying it was inauthentic, but the fact that he is defending his wife in front of his players is setting a tone. It is setting a dynamic. And he put his back to the wall for any of his players, too. And so that dynamic, that very public, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to say, that's what attracts people to this program. It goes hand in hand with the wins, in my opinion. So when people are mad that Shane isn't talking about schemes, he's talking about his wife's cookies that were getting hated on, like, he is who he is for a reason, and he's intentional about that. And I think that if he isn't willing to show who he is, a lot of people don't come here.
I think, too, if he's talking about cookies in a press conference, he's pretty comfortable with what's happening on the practice field.
Exactly. And it maybe means that he is actually bringing us cookies on Tuesday, which I know is a joke, but we'll see what happens.
You never know.
You never know.
There's a perception battle he's trying to fight here. And he said that the critique was that they were undercooked. I appreciate that. I kind of prefer chocolate chip cookies to be a smidgen.
I kind of like a soupy cookie. It's like the Drake and Josh, like, brownie soup. That was a deep pull there.
That is a deep pull. Like, that is a very deep pull.
It made me think of that immediately.
I see that's how, like, I'll never complain about a chocolate chip cookie being slightly undercooked. I'm a man that will eat cookie dough out of, like, the tub, right?
Yeah.
That's the best ice cream on the planet, too, is any type of cookie dough ice cream. I will never complain.
Never.
About it.
Never, ever.
Not fully, like, crisped up. Doesn't have to be crisped up, right? Like, a cookie doesn't have to be a take. It doesn't have to always be scorching hot. We can find the scorching hot takes on the message boarding. Coming up next here on the early game, it's one of our favorite segments every week. It's Message Board Mayhem. That's next.
Highway 60 near I-26, an accident there. Also, I-26 westbound at Highway 1. 2 more to make you aware of. I-77 southbound at Garner's Ferry and North Brickyard Road at North Springs Road. So please be careful. I want you to have a good Friday. Might have a couple afternoon or evening thunderstorms. 93 will be our high today. An isolated afternoon storm tomorrow, 91. And then a stretch of sunshine, she says. Starting on Sunday, 92. And it'll be sunny in the low 90s for a few days. 77 currently on the early game.
The madness of college football season coming very soon, technically in 8 days. A week from tomorrow, we'll have a top 25 matchup in Dublin. That's exciting. But we still have to fill in time to get ourselves ready with theories, delusions of grandeur, all that type of stuff. And I usually, when I look for this, I like to go on Message Board Geniuses to find it. And for Message Board Mayhem, we have some doozies. Lulu, does it make you concerned or excited if a coach is talking a lot about the punter before the season starts?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in general,
If they're just bringing up the punter.
probably concerned. But if it's Shane, I'm not saying this to defend Shane. I just mean in the context of not
Yes.
having Kai and trying to hype up his replacement. But overall, if someone's really gung-ho on a punter early, there's concern levels.
Well, there at least one message board poster on Husker Online, Nebraska's On 3 site, is a little concerned. He says, so many bragging about our punter. Is that really a good sign? Goes on to say, and I get he appears to be a great punter and that special teams need to improve, but come on. People love to talk about Connor Booth too, but ask yourself, would he even make the team at any top 10 program? No. The fact he is in the mix means we still haven't recruited well enough. How many other top schools are people talking about their punter as one of their main focuses, or even mentioned? If we want championships again, we better start producing all-conference and all-Americans at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, DB. Seems like only schools without dominant players in top 22 talk about punters like we are. Are we not better than this?
That was loaded.
That was loaded.
That's a lot. It makes me think of the Caleb Williams clip from Hard Knocks last year when he told the punter, like, you're not going to be needed much this year. And that just aged so poorly, so poorly, as did the clip of the old Bears coach's kids and wife in the stands, like, oh, it's so great to have a good punter. And then he got fired.
And then, and then he gets fired. Yeah. In classic, Bears fashion. If anybody knows, Jen Jensen knows about Bears and punting. But honestly, if I'm going to play college football therapist here for this fan, look at Iowa, a team that beats you with regularity in the last game of the year, dominating field position. They have great defenses every year. Now, Nebraska certainly has not had great defenses every year, but there is a formula to where if you have a really good punter, it can help you win football games. The punter at Iowa, who's now playing for the Chicago Bears, very rarely do punters actually get drafted. It was good enough to be able to flip the field constantly. And you could even argue that punting was their best offense at times, and that's a program that still wins 8 or 9 games. I would not have a doom meter very too high if they're talking about the punter a lot. It's still an important position. It's not the sexiest, but it still matters. I think Nebraska has other issues at hand about, maybe Dylan Raiola taking that next step and maybe playing more like Patrick Mahomes instead of looking more like Patrick Mahomes and having the rest of that offense kind of come along. And, maybe you don't lose the turnover battle in every game you play, and you won't lose all these one-score games.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the level doesn't have to be crazy high if there is any concern there.
Lulu Kesson, what's one fan base you're scared of?
in terms of me or putting myself in the shoes of a team?
Let's just say at a tailgate situation, if an opposing team's fans are coming in. I know, like in the NFL, I did have to work security at a Titans Raiders game, and we had a security meeting where the head of security said, "Hey, Raiders fans have a reputation. Be on your toes for this game."
I see what you're saying. I would probably lean Texas A&M.
Okay. Okay.
But
Outside the box answer. I like that.
I famously got a $20 bill from a very, very drunk Jets fan in when the Patriots beat the Jets 45-3. A guy turned around in front of me and was like, I don't remember what he said, but he gave me a $20 bill and I was like 7, and I was like, all right, I'll take it. I had it for like 10 years, I think. And then eventually my mom or someone spent it. But yeah, I would probably, I don't know, that's just the first thing that comes to mind.
Well, for Clemson fans, there is a post on a Clemson message board that says, "Be safe and aware." And the post reads like this: "Please keep this in mind for LSU. LSU fans are a lot of crazy, but so are people in general." Fair point. "Going to be a lot of close contact with other vehicles, lots of drinking, and I don't care what you say. Obviously, allowing alcohol at the game should make you more cautious. Whether or not it's, quote, right or, quote, should be allowed. This is just more ramped up opener than usual. Go Tigers."
There's some context there, though, in terms of it being a season opener. Obviously, I know one person who went to LSU, and she's lovely.
I do too. Yeah.
And but overall, I guess those are fair points.
Yeah, and LSU fans definitely have a little bit of a reputation. I can't remember the blog post from years ago. Someone talking about going to Baton Rouge for a game, and like the line that always stuck out with me. It was just a blog post. I don't even think it was on a message board, but it stuck out to me that the place just smelled like bourbon and corn dogs, and that's all I think of sometimes when I think of LSU, that fan base.
Honestly, if I like bourbon, I feel like that wouldn't be the worst thing, which might be a crazy take, but I don't really like either food. But I understand why some might really kind of lean into that.
Lean into it a little bit. Some programs, some fan bases, leaning in to cheating, because Michigan's supposed to have the Connor Stallions saga not resolved, but punishments levied today. I don't know exactly what that's going to entail, but the NCAA has announced a press conference for it. That doesn't happen a lot, so one could reasonably guess that there's going to be some heavy repercussions from all of that just a few years ago. Well, on Bucknuts, which is the Ohio State message board, or a fan site, I think that's their 24/7 site, it says, "And we need to ramp up the cheating efforts. There is no more morality, and everything is off the table. The NCAA can go do something I don't feel comfortable reading on air," and then saying, "I'm dealing with the dumbness at the NCAA currently. Truth." And I had to very FCC sprucing that thing up. Fan bases now, instead of ragging on Michigan, maybe embracing their methods of going above and beyond with their advanced scouting.
Interesting. That took me for a second because I know someone named Buck, so that threw me for a loop. But
well, I probably would when you hear the website. Yeah, it probably does.
To actually answer that, I think that, no, I don't agree with that aspect of diving into the whole cheating world. And I think that I understand that standards and punishments look a lot different and are inconsistent if we're just talking about a general basis. But no, I don't necessarily buy into that take.
I was going to say, if you're going to do it, you better at least be good at it. That's been my thing with college sports, like cheating scandals. If you're going to do it, you better be smart about it and cover up your tracks and just don't let it be known. Some of the teams that were the best at it, the ones that you've never heard of.
I agree, but then they also make for such good documentaries.
They make for the documentaries that are going to be made on this later on in the future when Connor Stallions doesn't have a hand in the production of it. Like I thought that the Netflix one was insightful because you really get a deep dive into his mind on how he did this, and a savant in ways where he's able to decipher hand signals the way that he was. Now he went above and beyond to do it outside of what is allowed in the parameters of the rules, but I thought it was interesting to see that guy be able to decipher all of this and really be able to like apply the smarts that he had to doing it. Like that is wildly impressive. You walk away from that and you're like, yeah, it's a scandal, but my God, the guy was good at it, you know. But once we can get a little further in, along the line, and history can kind of take its, run its course a little bit, I'm excited to see the documentaries that come from a third party produced documentary about the Michigan scandal. That's Message Board Mayhem for today. The theme for the show in its entirety, coaching. We'll continue that on the other side, and I'll give you a stat that you need to hear to believe. And Gamecock fans, you will be pleased. That is next here on the Early Game.
Winslow Way at Clemson Road. That's an accident to make you aware of. Also, North Brickyard Road at North Springs Road. I-77 southbound at Garner's Ferry. I-26 westbound at Highway 1, trying to get that earlier tie-up cleaned up. And Highway 60 near I-26. Two more to make you aware of. Emmanuel Church Road at Two Notch Road and Augusta Highway at Pisgah Church Road. And that forecast looking pretty decent. I mean, yeah, we might have a chance for a thunderstorm this afternoon or this evening. Another chance for an isolated storm tomorrow. Today's high 93, tomorrow's high 91. Sunny for the next, from Sunday through about Wednesday. So it's certainly going to welcome that. Highs in the low 90s. And kind of holding steady this morning, 77 on the early game.
All right. Got a lot of good feedback our Firehouse Subs text line. A lot of people complimentary of my friend Lulu Keston from the Greenville News, which gives me the opportunity, Lulu, to further introduce, because she's been on the phone. We've had her, like, if you listen to the post-game show when I was on with Jay Phillips, friend of the program, her first time being on this program, first time being in studio, but outside the Greenville News, where can they see your work, Lulu?
I post a lot of it on social media.
As one does.
Yeah, on my Instagram. I'm on Twitter or X, Instagram, Blue Sky.
It's Twitter for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always going to be Twitter. I'm so sorry. X is just silly, so it's Twitter.
Yeah, I refer to it. I don't think I've ever actually said X other than correcting myself.
And just right
yeah,
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a Twitter acknowledging, Twitter truther show here.
Right. And yeah, that's probably, obviously Greenville Online, I try to, sort of USA Today is really big on like multimedia content nowadays, and so I've been posting some video form, sort of breaking down my articles in the video form on TikTok lately.
Ah, nice. That's going to get Preston Thorne's attention. Big TikTok guy.
You can also find me on TikTok, I guess now, which sounds crazy to say.
Yeah, if I still haven't gotten to the point. My TikTok account is like completely anonymous, and I just made it because people send them to me, and I have to have some way of like opening it up and viewing it. But I haven't actually posted anything on there. But I've now figured out, now that I'm slowly evolving, how to maybe condense like our videos a little bit and get it to where it's suitable to post on that platform. I might start doing that a little more.
That'd be fun.
It would be fun.
I'll give you my handle. Address, whatever you call it.
Okay.
I might have to actually change mine to my real name now.
Yeah, I would do that.
Instead of my alias.
I have a private TikTok that no one work-related will ever find.
The secret.
Yeah.
The Lulu Kesson secret TikTok.
Exactly. Where I just repost the most random videos. So
as long as it's not John Mateer and you're not incriminating yourself on that.
That was crazy.
We had a lot of fun with that one yesterday.
Yeah.
We had a whole lot of fun with that one yesterday. We've been talking about practice a lot. I'm going to channel my inner Allen Iverson here and say practice. We're talking about practice. We're talking a lot of practice here today. And Tyler Head, sound extraordinaire, has pulled some of my favorite practice clips of all time. And I thought, what better way to discuss coaches talking about practice, talking about coaching, than playing some of the classics. So I will present to you right here. Let's start with cut 4. This is one cuts a little close to home on today's list.
Another sorry practice today. These guys, I don't know if we're going to be able to beat anybody this year. Quarterbacks, they can't hit the broadside of a barn right now. I don't know if we could hit that indoor facility right there. Receivers, they couldn't catch a cold if it was the middle of February, dropping everything. Defensive backs, gosh, I wonder why they got grass stains all over their jerseys. They fall about every play. About 2 or 3 of them are falling. And our kickers, gee, it's like the Army, left, right. They're kicking it all over the place. I don't know if we can beat anybody this year. Guys, and leadership, no, we don't have any leaders out here. Guys are soft. They just can't. I don't know. Maybe I ought to give them a week off and start over and see if we can regroup and find some real tough guys out here. But it's been a struggle this preseason. It's been a big struggle, man. I don't know how we're going to be. Have you ever heard a coach say that?
What's funny is, like, Sometimes you don't know if he's being tongue-in-cheek or if he was being serious, but when you take into account that was before the 2015 season, and in 2015 he only coached 6 games and they went 3-9. Maybe there was a lot of truth to what he said, but an all-time, all-honesty moment from a coach after a practice.
Absolutely. It's sort of looking at it and diving in, like, okay, joke, not joke, sort of decoding it as a whole is very funny.
That's how you know when someone's like fully immersed in the bit, is when you can no longer tell if they are in the bit, right? Like that is it's comedic mastery at a different level.
And he was so proud of himself afterward. Did you guys ever hear, a coach come out of practice like that? He was so excited, like, got you. He was quite joyful.
He loved it. He absolutely ate that up. And one thing, out of all the things that I've always wanted to ask Steve Spurrier, I've never had the chance to talk to him, but the one thing I've always wanted to ask is, do you prepare your material, or is this just off the dome? Like the Army left, right thing with the field goal kicking. I'm so curious to know if that's something he woke up that morning and said, oh, that's a banger. Write that down. Let me jot this down on a sheet of paper here, and I want to say this after practice, whether or not the kickers are hitting it or
meeting?
not.
Like, did he get coaches together and say, okay, I need some kind of fun phrases and to kind of slam the guys. And what do I do? What we got? Come on, we're going to spitball right now.
He turned the coaches meeting into an SNL production meeting.
Yes.
Right? I think that kind of feels like it a little bit if that was prepared, because it sounded prepared.
Exactly. Or if it wasn't, he should do stand-up at Art Bar on Tuesday nights.
Oh,
yes. Imagine that concept. That would be very funny.
Could you imagine sitting at Art Bar on a Tuesday night for stand-up, and Steve Spurrier walks up on stage and is just telling Tennessee Citrus Bowl jokes for an hour?
That would be the most insane fever dream ever.
It would be. Just seeing Steve Spurrier at Art Bar would be a fever dream on its own, but seeing him go up there and do a stand-up would be absolutely hilarious. He was the best at that in terms of just giving quotes, and sometimes we crave in college football, especially in media, of coaches being more honest. And of course, you can't be completely, you can't just say everything that you did in practice. There are some things that are state secrets and some things that you want to be able to control from a perception standpoint. But it is refreshing and, of course, really funny when they do come out there and say that, even if it does result in a 3-9 season. Jen, one more. This isn't just one of my favorite post-practice clips of all time. This is arguably the greatest coaching press conference clip of all time. This is cut 5 from an incident that happened just up the road in Myrtle Beach.
Trying to get our 2 boys ready to carry them to golf tournament before practice, right? 12 cats live across the road. Our door's open. Screen's broke. We need to get a new screen door, but the screen's broke, so you can come in through the screen, but you can't get back out of it. I turn and look, there's a little kitty cat in our kitchen. So I said, what are you doing in here, little kitty cat? By that time, the cat turns, tries to get back out. That screen won't go that way. Cat starts going, meow, all crazy. And I told our players, we need more dogs. Bo's barking in the back. I have to go shut Bo up. Mel's like, what's going on? I said, there's a cat in the house. Cat in the house? I said, yeah, there's a cat in the house. So I told our players, I tried to let it out the front door. Meow, meow, the cat's still going crazy in there. And I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
We need more dogs. Don't need more cats. That is David Bennett, former coach of Coastal Carolina. And then after his coaching days at Coastal Carolina, was even at River Bluff High School over in Lexington for a little bit as well. And then I think it says, at least says right now, because I wanted to double check and make sure if he's still there or not. But his administrative career as an AD, 2017-23, Lexington School District 1. So that is a local legend, David Bennett, providing what is, to me, the funniest coaching press conference moment.
That's absolutely hilarious. I'd never heard that before. And the story combined with his thick accent, oh my God, that was phenomenal.
The best part was watching Lulu process this for the first time. That's her first time hearing that. It is an all-timer. And it's applicable, right? Like, we talk about having that dog in them. David Bennett got to kind of verbalize what it means to maybe have more of that dog in you and maybe compare it to another family-friendly household animal.
Yeah, he could have lost you so easily, but he kept, he stayed with it, and you wanted to stay with it too. That was very good. Thank you for introducing that to me.
Yes, that is another great example of a coach sticking to the bit and being so good at the bit We knew that, what he meant by that, but sticking to the bit enough to where it's really funny. So all-time classic from David Bennett. When I saw that on the cut list this morning from Tyler, I was like, I will carve out time to have that played on air. That clip is a winner. And Lulu and I will give our winners for today's show to round out today's early game. Are tax issues one of the things that's keeping you up at night? Is it just one of those main stressors that is keeping you from enjoying other facets of your life? Well, as Forrest Gump would say, John Acton Law Firm would make it, one less thing, because they are here for you to help resolve those tax issues that may be weighing you or your business down. 803-771-9800. That's what you can call to set up a free consultation. I'm going to say it again in case you thought I stuttered or in case you just didn't hear me correctly. A free consultation where they can talk with you and you can talk to their local team that's been resolving these income or business tax issues for good. They understand those issues and they've been helping people get their peace of mind for a long time now, and they can help you escape that IRS maze just like they have many others. Again, that phone number is 803-771-9800. You can always visit EctonLawFirm.com. That's ECTONLawFirm.com. Man, we touched on some classics in the last segment of some all-time great coaching press conference moments. Mike Singletary, when he was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, declared that he wants winners. And he went pretty hard on that. He wants winners. The players that he had then can't win with him, can't coach with him, can't do it. So we're going to fulfill Mike Singletary's wishes. We're going to give our winners for today's show. And I got to first start off with the big winner today, Lulu Kesson from the Greenville News. Kemi here, first time in studio. We've had her on the phone countless times, but her first time in studio. Give it up. Give it up.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
So you become a winner for today's show.
I will wear that as a badge of honor this Friday, the entire rest of the day.
Tell everybody, I'm a winner on the early game.
I'll write it on my forehead.
That's right. Even better. That way you don't forget people that you come in contact with. Also, won't forget.
Exactly.
Your winners for today's show.
I would probably say Clayton White and the defense continuing some good stuff. Those conversations we had, I would pull that for sure, top of the list. And the clip that you just played about the cats and wanting dogs.
Yes.
That's up there too.
The Coach Bennett clip, a winner for all time. But to kind of like further on Lulu's point here, we were talking about player development and really throughout the course of the show, really focusing in on the coaching staff for it being a theme. And the coaching staff has a really good track record of turning guys that maybe aren't blue chip recruits into NFL draft prospects. Since 2021, when Shane took over, so this is the 22, 23, 24, 25 drafts, 11 South Carolina players that were not blue chips, not 4 or 5 stars coming out of high school, were drafted in the NFL draft. 7 of those 11 defensive players, and 5 of those 7 came in this last year's draft. None of Nick Emenwari, TJ Sanders, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, Tonka Hemingway were 4 or 5 stars. They were all 3 stars coming out of high school, all draft picks, most of those in the second round. So they turn into being players that if you were a 4 or 5 star out of high school, you'd be projected to end up there. And to give you context, like Elijah, 11 non-blue chip players being drafted in the NFL draft since 2021. Is that a lot? Well, I'll read you the schools that are some of the biggest names in college football and tell you how many they have produced. Georgia, 13, so a little bit more. And they've just had a ton of players drafted in general. It took a while to get to that number. Michigan, 14. Those are the only 2 schools I'm about to mention that had more than South Carolina. Alabama only had 3. South Carolina's had triple the amount, more than triple that, almost 4 times the amount of non-blue chip players drafted than Alabama. Tennessee's had 8, Texas has had 7, LSU has had 10, Clemson's had 4, Ohio State just 5. So if you want to talk about in terms of programs that have a proof of concept for developing talent from the time they get to your campus to the time they leave, South Carolina has been able to display a really good knack for doing that, and Clayton White being a big part of that, considering how many of those players for South Carolina are on the defensive side of the ball.
And as a recruit, that's what I want to hear. Obviously, you hear stories more and more about NFL, late round draft picks and their success. Like at the end of the day, it does in some ways matter what round you go, but it ultimately doesn't. And like we were talking about before with injuries and longevity, you kind of just got to get there and prove that you're there for a reason. And I think South Carolina's done a really great job, especially in the last couple of years, at letting people get there, and the rest sort of they do for themselves.
And that kind of leads me to another one of my winners, a pair of winners. I'll make it a team, right? The Los Angeles Chargers. No, they don't play in San Diego anymore, and it took me a while to be able to not mess that one up. But they're playing tomorrow, 7 o'clock against the Rams. You probably won't be able to watch it live, but the NFL Network shows all of these things. But I choose the Chargers because they have 2 players that are former Gamecocks that are fighting for roster spots and I think have a fantastic chance at doing it with Rocket Sanders and Dale Von Campbell. Now, we know what Rocket did here, and I think anybody who watched Rocket play, whether it's here at South Carolina or at Arkansas, looked at him and say, that's an NFL running back. But Dale Von Campbell, the stats over the course of the season maybe don't jump out at you, but in one game, he had 4 catches for 74 yards against the Saints last Sunday, had a 2-point conversion, and caught a bomb from DJ Uiagalelei, which seems like a fever dream for the state of South Carolina college football fans. But those 2 guys have great chance of making the roster. I think that's definitely something to watch for over the weekend. There's a good chance that they have a couple of Gamecocks, and they're going to have Kyle Kennard anyway. We'll see if Kyle Kennard plays against the Rams, but I'll give the Chargers as a win today. Lulu, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a couple hours. It's been a blast. I'm Elijah Campbell. She's Lulu Kesson. Jen Jensen behind the glass. That's it for today. Tyler Head and the Extra Point with Jack Feltry is next.
Preston here for our friends at Integrated Media. We've been trying to tell you that the season was on the way, but guess what? That means you still have time, but why would you wait to call the folks at Integrated Media to get your outdoor setup ready? You can have Samsung TVs that are waterproof. You can have Sonos speakers for your TV and music, Wi-Fi that works indoors and outdoors, so you can have all your devices playing at the same time. Your laptop, your iPad, your